Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind. Who is this that darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Gird up your loins like a man. I will question you, and you shall declare me. Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me, if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Or who stretched the line upon it? On what were its bases sunk? Or who laid its cornerstone? When the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy. Can you lift up your voice to the clouds that a flood of waters may cover you? Can you send forth lightnings that they may go, and say to you, here we are? Who has put wisdom in the clouds, or given understanding to the mists? And the Lord said to Job, shall the fault finder contend with the Almighty? He who argues with God, let him answer it. Then Job answered the Lord, behold, I am of small account. What shall I answer thee? I lay my hand on my mouth. I have spoken once, and I will not answer twice, but I will proceed no further. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind. Gird up your loins like a man. I will question you, and you declare to me. Will you even put me in the wrong? Will you condemn me that you may be justified? Have you an arm like God, and can you thunder with a voice like this? Deck yourself with majesty and dignity. Clothe yourself with glory and splendor. Pour forth the overflowings of your anger, and look on everyone that is proud and abase him. Look on everyone that is proud and bring him low, and tread down the wicked where they stand. Hide them all in the dust together, bind their faces in the world below. Then I will also acknowledge to you at your own right hand and give you victory. The word of the God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
Am I on? There we go. Just to find the right button. Good morning. Just so you know, my phone is just so I can reread the scripture, so I'm not checking my voicemail or sending text messages in the middle of my sermon. Believe me, I'm not that gifted. So we are finishing up a 3-week sermon series on the book of Job, and I know there are many of you today that are catching us on week 3. So just very quickly, I want to remind everybody what we've been chatting about. So a reminder that the book of Job is not a historical book. All right, the vast majority of theologians, both Christian and Jewish, agree that there wasn't a historical person who was Job, that instead this is a story that was written to help humanity deal with tough questions. And the underlying question in the book of Job is, why do bad things happen to good people? Why do bad things happen if I haven't done anything wrong? Which is really a greater illusion that we're already operating under that assumption. That, God never says that to humanity, but in the time that Job existed, or that Job's story would have been written, that was a primary way of thinking, that if I could but please the gods, I would be rewarded, and if something was going wrong in my life, it meant the gods were angry. And this has seeped into the Israelite culture, and so they have this sense of thinking that, that there's this one-to-one. If God is happy, I'm doing good, and if God is unhappy with me, I'm doing bad. And so the book is trying to address that misleading way of thinking about God as well. So the first week I shared with you sort of the opening of the book. For those of you that haven't, just been reading Job every single day of your lives, just as a reminder that the opening of the book is a conversation between God and a character called Satan. And Satan isn't necessarily the devil the way we think of him in this particular story. It's more like a prosecuting attorney who's roaming the earth and trying to find people who are not doing God's way. And so God and Satan have this argument. The only reason Job is righteous is because Job has everything he could want. And that if that was lost, then Job would no longer be faithful to God. And so God says, go ahead, do it. Let me see your, whatever, just don't kill him. And then it just rains down a heap of nothing, awful. Job's home collapses with his children in it, so he loses all his children. All of his animals, which are his entire income, die. I'm talking thousands of animals. They just lay down in the dirt and turn to dust. And then, as if that's not bad enough, because there's nothing really wrong with Job himself, Satan takes to another, and he covers Job head to toe in open, bruising sores. Which is when I always say, that's it, I'd be like, that's it, I'm done. Because I don't do sores. I don't do it. And so that's when I was lost it with God, I think. So, but Job kind of hangs in there. And so the very first week as we talked about those passages, we took a moment to recognize how close each of us does actually live to losing everything. That we're really closer to the circumstances than we might let ourselves think, and to ask ourselves, where does our faith come from? Does it really come from the fact that life is good, or does it come from a deeper place, a deeper relationship with God and with Jesus Christ? So that was the first sermon. And then last week I shared with you, so the rest of the book, until we get to the place we got to today, so chapters like 2 through 32, are made up of a rotational conversation. Job has 3, I use the word because scripture does, friends, but it's not what I would call friends, but he has these 3 men that are talking to him, and they each talk, and then he responds to them, and they do that 3 times. And so last week I shared with you one of Job's responses to his friends, and Job was making the argument, if I could just get a hold of God, if I could just have God right here in front of me, I could explain what's wrong with this situation and how God's not being fair. Which led us to a whole conversation last week about, did we really want the fair God? Did we really want God to be going through and each time we mess up punish us? Or did we in fact appreciate what I call the unfair God, the one that often gives us the benefit of the doubt, that allows us to have forgiveness even if we haven't earned it or deserve it, and how much that can set us free. So we had this conversation of the unfair God. And so today is the first time since the beginning of the book that God speaks. So God has this little conversation with Satan, and God kind of disappears from the book, which is one of the, I think which is really intentional by the author, that very often when we are going through difficult times, we feel that God is not present. And instead we start to turn to our friends, and we start to think about what we could do to change our circumstances, and there becomes this distance between us and God. Right up until just before the scripture reading for today started, Job gets a little big for his britches. And God has about had it with that. And that's where we're going to start today. So will you pray with me? Wondrous and gracious God, we give you thanks and praise for the gift of this day, for the wonderful gift of being present for a baptism, of welcoming a new sister into our body of Christ, and knowing that that's happening in places all over the world today, God. That all over the world we're gaining new brothers and sisters, and they're all a part of us, not just the one child we welcomed here, but all over the world. And so help us to feel that. Help us to feel that connection, God, in a world that's really driving us to feel apart. Help us to feel together. Pour out your Spirit upon us here. Let your words that are offered up be truly your words, your message. Let each of us hear what we need to hear, and help us go forth as faithful disciples from this place. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
So, as I mentioned, so Job has been having this conversation with his friends, and the theme of the conversation of the friends has been, you need to figure out what you're doing wrong, consistently. And this is why I struggle to have them think of them as friends, because, if my house burned down, and my best friend came to be with me, and she said, well, what did you do wrong that God felt like he needed to burn your house down? The rest of that conversation is not going to go real well between she and I, because that's not why I called her, right? And my best friend would never say that, right? She's going to show up and she's going to be, what can I do? Do you have a place to stay? Do you have clothes? My friends would be all in right there. Let me give you a hug, cry on my shoulder. What do you need? She wouldn't be sitting with me saying, well, what have you done wrong? And that's why she's my best friend and not these 3 people out of the book of Job. And they never change their tune. And so what happens is they say this, and Job says, I'm telling you, I didn't do anything wrong. And we know that to be true as the reader of the book. We have more knowledge than the characters do in the book. We know that's true because we heard the conversation between God and Satan. We know that Job didn't do anything to deserve what's happening to him. It's just happening. And a lot of times, I think that's something we can all relate to. We didn't do anything that deserved what's happening in our lives at a particular moment. It's just happening to us. And so then the question is, how do we deal with that? And how do we maintain our relationship with God through those moments? Because there's a lot of those moments in life, amen? Right? More than we would wish. And I've talked in some of my previous sermons about the fact that we don't do ourselves any favor by having sort of a default human setting that everything should go our way. Where did we get that idea? Because there's no promise of that in Scripture. Jesus never says, if you love me, everything in life will be great and easy and no, in fact, quite the opposite, pick up your cross and follow me, right? I can guarantee that following me is going to be hard, is basically what Jesus says. But we don't think that way, right? We find ourselves just caught up in the sense of it should go our way, and so then when it doesn't, it really throws a wrench in our lives and how we think of ourselves and we think of God. And so Job just keeps saying, I didn't do anything wrong. And the friends, they go back to it. Well, you must have. And they're running through a list of things. Like, did you do this? Did you, and hammering at him. And Job's like, no. And then his final, this is, and he kind of gets, it's God's misunderstanding of what's happening is a summary of what Job is saying. And it's really hard sometimes to read the book of Job because it's all written in Hebrew poetry. How many experts of ancient Hebrew poetry do we have here today? Yeah, and I'm with you on that, right? Like, okay. So it's tough to understand, but I'm summarizing like a 37-verse chapter when I say that Job's explanation is God has misunderstood, God has messed up. And that's when God chooses to respond. And God's response is basically, oh really? Oh really, little man of mine? And God likes Job. Job is faithful, he's righteous, he does the things he's supposed to do, he's raised his family well. God, at the beginning, he's a fan of Job. And so, but this is the first section of scripture that was shared with you this morning was sort of God's way of saying, I'm so sorry. You think I'm wrong. You think I don't understand what's happening. You think I'm not paying it. Basically, you think I'm not doing a good job as God and that you actually know how to be God. And that's really the conversation. And God doesn't, he kind of smacks Job down a little bit. He says, I'm sorry, where were you when I separated the light from the dark and made the earth and the sea? You were there? You were God when that happened? I must have missed that, Job. And I'm sorry, where were you when I created all the beings and you were there saying this is how I think deer should look and this is the different birds I want to see? That's funny, Job. I don't remember you being there. And where were you when this happened and then that happened? And I thought, it's just such a power. It's not a short conversation. God doesn't have one or two things that God highlights in this moment. Because I chopped it up for you, because I know you only sit here so long before you're all going like, there's food in the fellowship hall and we know it. I'm going to wrap this up, right? So it goes on for chapters, not verses, chapters. Right? There are like 3 full chapters of God going, where were you, son? Where were you, little man, when I was doing this and I was doing this? And out of that comes a question that I think all of us really should think about, because I found it ringing very true in my own life. So those that are part of my regular coming, I never put anything on you that I haven't asked myself like a whole week long. So I'm sharing this from my heart. So I thought, if I'm very honest, I have been where Job is. I have thought that maybe I knew a better way. I have thought that maybe if I could just get God's attention, I could explain what's happening as if God's not paying attention. And that's not being faithful to the promises of who God is. And I found God talking to me this week. Oh, really, little girl? Why don't you take a seat for a second? And why don't we just talk, let's forget the past. Let's forget all of the, billions of years of things I've been doing. We'll set that aside. We'll call that the prequel. Why don't we just talk about your current world, little Miss Amanda Pauline? If you think you can be God. And I felt like the question then became, are you sure you want to be God? Because I actually really tend to operate under 2 certainties. One is that there is death, and the second is that I am not God. there may be a whole lot of things of life that I don't know, but those 2 things I am absolutely clear on. But I think there are times where I think I have the abilities of God. I get a little big for my britches. And I don't think I'm the only human that strays in that category. And I think when times are bad, we tend to lean more that way than when times are good. I think that's a reality that the book of Job brings out for us. And so I found God saying to me this week, things like, I'm so sorry, Amanda. There are 850 million people living in poverty in your world and going hungry. Are you sure you want to be God and figure out how to feed all of them? Did you know, by the way, little Miss Amanda, that it would take $60 billion to alleviate all that poverty, and that there are 100 people in the world that if they gave up but a quarter of their income could pay that? 100 people, the richest 100 people, if they wrote a check for a quarter of their income, would solve poverty in our world. And God was saying to me, and I can't get them to do it. Are you sure you want to be God? You want to be in charge of those 100 people plus the 850 million? Oh, Amanda, by the way, as you're preparing for your sermon, you should know a few things. You should know that by the time you get to preaching, 450 children will have died of hunger just since your worship service began. Are you sure you want to be God, Amanda? And I was like, wow. I mean, God is like the whole world. I mean, you're really being big on me right now. I mean, I didn't say I was God of like the whole world. And I was like, no problem. Let's talk about your country. I was like, oh. Should have known, right? I mean, we should know that God's going to have answers to these things. And we're not going to like the answers sometimes, you know. Oh. You know, and so God started raining down upon me statistics. And I happened to be at several conferences this week, and I was barraged with statistics of domestic violence. There are maybe 100 women here today, and 1 in 4 of them, 25 women sitting in our congregation, have been victims of domestic violence. That's what the statistics would tell us. 1 in 7 men. Sitting here with us this morning, Amanda, are you sure you want to be God? You want to be trying to help them? You want to be trying to change the hearts of their users? You want to be trying to help their children? You want to be in charge of all those people and all those? Are you sure, Amanda, that you want to be God? Half the women here, according to statistics, have been sexually harassed. Are you sure, Amanda? You sure you want to be God and be in charge of all that? I was like, man, you're still talking like the whole country, God. I mean, I wasn't saying I could be God of the whole world, the whole country. I said, no problem. Let's talk about your region. You want to be in charge of hurricane recovery? Man, I just can't catch a break with God. It's like, man, lighten up. And then just yesterday, God and I had a tough conversation. God said, I'm in charge of 11 new souls in heaven today, Amanda. Because one of my other children walked into their place of worship, a place they came to be with me, to worship me, to be my chosen people, as I promised them they would be. And one of my other children, a child I cannot reach, a child who I cannot change the heart of, walked in and killed 11 of my other children, Amanda. Are you sure you want to be God? Because I'm not just in charge of the 11. I'm in charge of the shooter. I'm in charge of every person who was in the synagogue. I'm in charge of all the people who will suffer PTSD. I'm in charge of all the people whose PTSD will be triggered having watched it on the news. I'm in charge of every Christian and Muslim and Jew and any other person of faith who wants to go out and get a gun today and bring it to worship with them, because they will feel safer being with me if they have a weapon, because what if someone walks into their place of faith? I'm in charge of all of them, Amanda. Are you sure you want to be God? And I said, no, I'm good. Thank you very much. Amen. So I'm out. You're good? You be God. I will be. And really, that's exactly the response that Job gets. This is my favorite part of the entire book of Job. It's on the 40th chapter. It says, then Job answered the Lord. So the Lord's been doing sort of his own version of this with Job. And Job says, see, I'm a small account. Job says, see, I didn't mean like that. You misunderstood what I was saying, God. I don't mean like you misunderstood because it's your fault. I didn't say, well, that was my bad. I'm just a little guy, Job says. I am a small guy. I get it. I'm nothing. In the grand scheme of the whole big shebang, I'm nothing. And it is pretty darn amazing. You pay attention to me at all. And wow, how shall I answer you now? And he says, I lay a hand on my mouth. I have spoken once, and I will not do it twice. I have learned my lesson. I thought that should be my prayer every single morning when I wake up. Dear Lord, I have awoken. I lay a hand over my mouth. My mouth gets me in all kinds of trouble, not just with God. Oh, man. You know, right? Isn't there it's one of those prayers like, Dear Lord, please put your arm around my shoulder and your hand across my mouth. That's Job's response. So Job gets it. And I think it's a really great, the book of Job, not just the character, not just, the whole book really is this wonderful reminder, that there are unanswered questions. The book of Job does not answer the question, why do bad things happen to good people? It just recognizes that it does happen. The book of Job really gives no comfort to that. His friends are very unhelpful. But it does remind us there is a whole lot happening. And that God is working with a whole lot of things, including free will. How often we mess up things for ourselves, or one of our brothers and sisters in the world does. And so this reminder to Job, are you sure you want to be God? It got me to thinking of a movie that I really like called Bruce Almighty. If you haven't seen it, you really, really must. It's fantastically funny. It has Jim Carrey, and we're going to watch a clip here in just a second. Jim Carrey's having a Job kind of time. Nothing his name is Bruce. Nothing that Bruce wants happening in his life is falling into place. And he's pretty mad at God, and he's been pretty vocal about that anger in the movie. And he's been saying, so he's, and he has this one moment, it's really funny. He kind of loses it, and he's yelling at this guy, and he goes, "Smite me, almighty smiter!" And so God sends him a message and meets with him, and it turns out to be Morgan Freeman plays the role of God. And Morgan Freeman says, "I'm going to give you all my powers. You think you can do it better? Let's see you try." And so then Bruce leaves the meeting with all the powers of God. And I think in a very classic way, goes about fixing things in his life. Does not leave and say to the people around him, "Hey, guess what? I am now God. Is there anything I can do for you?" But goes about fixing everything in his life and working things out. And then the prayers start rattling in his ears. It's a really funny scene about how he tries to deal with them. And he says to God, "I can't handle all the prayers in the world. This is so much." And God says to him, "That wasn't the world. That was buffalo." Between the blocks of 34, and it's not even all buffalo, it's just a little. So Bruce decides he'll just tell everybody yes. And this is when mass chaos descends upon the city of Buffalo. That just, by telling everybody yes to what they want, creates an apocalyptic kind of issue. And so where we pick up is the world has really gone to a bad place, at least in the city of Buffalo. And Bruce is sort of walking through the street, and he's calling out to God. He's learned his lesson about not being God. And they're going to talk about a person named Grace in the scene. Grace is Bruce's girlfriend, who by this time he has totally messed up his relationship with and lost. All right, so I'd like you to, beyond the recognition that we probably really don't want the powers of God or to be in charge of the world, there's something else that Bruce realizes in this moment that I'd like you to try to be watching for.
Why now? Bruce, you have the divine spark. You have the gift for bringing joy and laughter to the world. I know, I created you. Go bring it to see. That's what I'm talking about. That's the spark. Go ahead. Use them. Lord, feed the hungry and bring peace to all of mankind. How's that? Quick. If you want to leave Miss America. Now, come on. What do you really care about? Grace. Grace. You wanted that? No. I want her to be happy. No matter what that means, I'll learn to find someone who will treat her with all the love she deserved from me. I want her to meet someone who will see her always as I do now. Through your eyes. Now that's a prayer. Yeah. Yeah. It's good. It's good. It's good. I'm gonna get right on. It will feel very good.
If you want to know how things work out for Bruce, you'll have to rent the movie. So Bruce has come to this realization, as I did through this week. Well, I don't really want to be in charge of the world, and I don't think I really should have the powers of God. I think I would cause the apocalypse pretty quickly, just as Bruce did. And I'm going to guess that one or two of you might feel the same way. I'm just hoping. But did you catch the other switch, the other piece that really transitioned in that moment? And it happens with the prayer, right? So he says to him, I want to pray. Which really, I started thinking about the book of Job, and I thought, Job never does pray. He talks, but he doesn't ever actually pray. Because all of his talk is about, if I could get God to this, if I could just say my word, he's just defending himself. He never actually says to God, is this really your will? What do you want me to do with it? Can you walk beside me through this time? He never does any of that. And the other thing he never ever seems to manage to do, even at the close of the book, Job never gets to the place of thinking about anyone other than Job. He never. So this is a man who was incredibly wealthy. Very, very wealthy. And when he loses it all, when he's sitting outside of the gate and, repenting, his friends are sitting with him, asking him what he did wrong, he just sits there and continues to defend himself. He never once says, wow, now I see how hard life can be for those that have nothing. Wow, now I have a whole sense of compassion for those that have lost a loved one that I never had before. Gee, when I had all that wealth, I wish I'd done more for people in my circumstance. And his friends who are there never get beyond making it about Job either. Not one of them says, would you like a change of clothes? Not one of them says, hey buddy, come stay on my couch while we rebuild your house. Not one of them says, would you like a warm meal? No one else should. Where is his community? Imagine my beloved congregation, if someone in our congregation's home and everything they had was destroyed for any reason, then we would not be in their front yard, and that there wouldn't be 10 different people that person could come stay with. It would just be a question of how nice of a bedroom do you want, and do you like pets? I've only been here a few months, and I know that to be true. We wouldn't just let that person sit in our parking lot in burlap and go, my life sucks. We'd be like, why don't you come in? We'll get you something nicer than burlap, first of all. Why don't you take a shower? Because the ashes that you're covered in is starting to smell. And let's figure out how to help you move forward. None of the people in the book of Job ever get to that place, and that's the place that Bruce gets to, right? When God says to him, do you want grace back? Excuse me. And he says, no. Because he's realized in that moment it's not about what he wants. He wants grace to be happy. And he wants grace to get someone who loves her the way that he should have. Someone that loves her the way that he sees her now through the eyes of God. You should know, at the very end of the book, Job gets it all back. His wealth is restored to him. He gets a house that twice over it's restored to him. He gets a nice house that's even nicer than before. He even has more children. And it says in the book that his children were the most beautiful and fair and wisest of all children. And there's still never a single line when the book closes about the fact, and then he began to help others. And Job, with his new learned lesson of what it's like to have nothing, to have all taken, of what it's like to walk through a hard time, opened a mental health counseling center. Job lived out the rest of his days, 140 years of them, it says. Just enjoying his stuff. Now, I don't want to be too hard on Job because, he has been through a tough time. But I do think there's just this message that not only are we not God, we really need to own that. We need to make that real for ourselves. We need that to not just be like a theological statement that we know intellectually, but when things are going wrong, when we look at the world and we start talking about how we could just fix it all, we really need to take a moment and think about, do you really want to be in charge of the world? And where were you when all this was happening? And I think then that's the other question, where are we? Even if we're not God, where are we when all these things are happening? What are we doing about them? How are we trying to change the world in the ways that we can? Maybe we can't save it all. Maybe we can't make it perfect. We're going to have to leave that in God's hands. And there will be things that we never understand. And there will be questions that we never have answers to. And there will be times in our lives that are just crap. And we haven't done anything wrong. We've been good, faithful people. They've done everything right. And our lives will just be like... And we will want to sit somewhere and cry out and make it about us. And I'm not saying we shouldn't grieve. I'm not saying those things. We should use rational sense here. But is there also opportunity in those moments to learn something? To use those moments of hurt and pain to then look at those around us and say, aha, now I see you in ways I did not see you before. Or that when we find our ways through those hurt and pains, to offer that to others. This is the story of the book of Job. Not just the understanding of who we are and who God is, but who we should be thinking about. Why is it about Job? Where's his wife? She lost everything too. And other than one line in the beginning where she says, I've had it with God, that's it. He doesn't comfort her. He's not with her. You think he was the only one that lost anything? It's never only about us, friends. Even in those very difficult, challenging moments. We are not God. We are the children of God. And today you made promises. I heard you. I heard all of you say, I do and I will. When I ask, will you take this beautiful little girl that we've been entrusted with, not just her parents, we, the whole community of faith, that I will help raise this beautiful little girl. And we have made that promise for hundreds of thousands of people and children, millions upon millions of people around the world that we have said we will be the family of. The book of Job challenges us to act like it. Who are you? God asks us. You may not be me, but that does not mean that there's nothing for you to do. And please, from time to time, just take a moment and ask yourself, how's my neighbor doing? Because God asks us to do two things: to love God and to love each other. And we can't do that if we don't think about each other, if we don't see each other, if we don't say something to each other. And perhaps we even need to suffer something for each other. Whatever's happening in the lives of your life today, do you know what's happening in the life of the person who shares your pew? Do you know their name? Did you say good morning? That's where it begins, friends. There shouldn't be a person in our body of faith that we don't take the time to get to know. So even if it's embarrassing because you know you should know their name, go up to someone today and say, I should know your name. And I know that. But I want to be a part of your life. Tell me your name again. Go up to someone and say, I've never seen you here before. Maybe you have been, but it's so nice to meet you. This is my name. I want you to be in my life. Because I'm a child of God and so are you. And if we don't do things for each other, no one will. Amen.
Amen.
Beloved, I invite you